Before the Emperor walked among men, before the stars themselves dared to shine, a question haunted the cosmos. What becomes of faith when the gods themselves turn to ash? In the hushed corridors of forgotten worlds, the answer lingers, whispered through the ruinous screams of lost civilizations, inscribed upon the bones of the faithful. Religion, that once blazing fire of purpose, was not merely abandoned, it was hunted, torn from the hearts of mortals, and eradicated by an authority that feared its own reflection. The galaxy remembers, but only in echoes. Those who survive speak of sacred texts burned into cosmic dust, of prophets whose eyes turned to black stars, and of the silent verdict delivered by the Imperium. Belief is a weapon, and it must be destroyed before it destroys you. On Zephyria, a dead world at the edge of Segmentum Obscurus, temples crumble under the weight of 1,000,000 forgotten prayers. Vaults of gold and silver, once glimmering with the devotion of billions, are hollowed into graves for the unrepentant. Priests who dared defy the edicts were flayed, their screams recorded in the psychic resonance of the planet, reverberating across centuries. Inquisitors write of these echoes in forbidden codices, yet the truths are so foul, so corrosive, that even the black ships avoid mentioning their source. The people of Zephyria, now slaves of machinery and doctrine, repeat prayers without meaning, their faith an empty echo. And yet, some nights, children awake whispering words older than the stars, phrases no mortal tongue should speak, proof that even annihilation cannot fully silence the devout. The galaxy, it seems, remembers the unremembered. The edict came not in violence alone, but in whispers, carried on the wings of angels whose eyes burned with truth too terrible to comprehend. These were the ecclesiarch's secret armies, the arbiters of heresy, moving through the void with silence as their blade. On every planet where a god still stirred in mortal hearts, fire rained from orbit, and temples became pyres of celestial ash. Those who survived were stripped of memory, shackled in their minds, and given new doctrines to serve a lie more absolute than death. And yet, the warp itself shivered. Even the Imperium recoiled at the erasure of belief, for faith, in its purest form, is a resonance that anchors reality. The galaxy's psychic lattice carries these tremors still, and in its trembling, some whisper that annihilating gods may awaken something far older than any priest, something older than the Emperor. On the hive world of Gisora, a single shrine remained, hidden beneath layers of industry and propaganda. Its priests had long been hunted, and yet, in catacombs choked with refuse, they performed rituals older than memory. To the mechanized enforcers of the Imperium, this was meaningless superstition. But the air hummed with something forbidden. Blood spattered on the walls did not simply stain. It shimmered, reflecting visions of galaxies that never were and stars that burned in reverse. These visions told of a time before the Emperor, before the Primarchs, when mortals had walked alongside entities that defied comprehension, entities that demanded obedience and consumed worlds for their amusement. It was here that the Inquisition first learned the cost of suppressing faith. The very warp began to twist unnaturally, bending minds and machines alike. The shrine fell silently, but the resonance it left behind whispered that extinguishing belief might awaken what had long slumbered beneath the void. The High Lords convened in a citadel carved from obsidian and bloodstone, debating the final eradication of faith. They did not speak of doctrine, but of power. Belief was a virus, infecting the mind, undermining authority. Yet some whispered that the Emperor himself had known something deeper, something no mortal or god should glimpse. The air grew thick with omens, and every hour the stars outside the citadel flickered as though acknowledging the terror of unspoken truths. Temples were not merely destroyed. Entire worlds were hollowed out, their psychers executed, their prayers excised from reality itself. And still, pockets of resistance persisted, small cults whose devotion defied logic, who chanted in languages that had never existed. Observers noted these anomalies vanish suddenly, as though swallowed by the void, leaving only faint psychic scars that no inquisitor dared to interpret. The galaxy trembled beneath the weight of a silence that was not empty. Something watched, and it remembered. In the Mechanicum archives, forbidden records speak of instruments capable of severing belief from flesh. These were not weapons of death, but of erasure psychic sieves that drained devotion until the soul itself was hollow. Entire populations became automatons, their prayers transmuted into energy for the Omnissiah's engines. Some theorists whispered that this energy fed the Emperor, but the texts are fragmentary, the margins scorched with heat of unknown origin. The servants of the machine god cataloged the effects meticulously. Obedience was absolute, yet the psychic lattice groaned under the absence of faith. And worse, the warp quivered where devotion once thrived, forming new and malignant patterns that no logic could decode. Scholars claim these patterns are dying gods, or perhaps unborn ones. In any case, the archives close abruptly at this point, leaving a single damning annotation. The void hungers for the prayers it never received. Proceeding may awaken it. Across the segmentum pacificus, planets whispered of saints who should not have existed. Tales recount priests whose deaths did not silence them, whose faith became a resonance that altered reality. Starships vanished when approaching these worlds, engines torn apart by forces that obeyed no law. Some fleets reported spectral armies marching across barren landscapes, chanting in unbroken harmony, while distant stars flickered as if listening. The Inquisition labels these events anomalies, yet no report survives intact. Every witness either disappears or returns insane, unable to translate what they have seen. The galaxy has cataloged thousands of such occurrences, and all hint at a terrifying truth. Belief is not merely a concept, but a force. When it is suppressed, twisted, or destroyed, it persists, mutates, and waits in the silent dark between the stars, biding a patience measured in millennia. The Adeptus Astartes speak little of religion, yet some chapters preserve secret rites older than the Imperium itself. Within these clandestine rituals, warriors glimpse what mortals cannot: the agony of gods consumed, their essence flayed across the void. They tell of visions in which the stars themselves bleed, and the skulls of prophets whisper warnings to anyone who dares listen. When inquisitors attempt to eradicate these vestiges, they encounter resistance not of flesh, but of will, a psychic defiance that bends armor and blade alike. Records note that a single battle on a dead world called Korith left 3 entire companies of space marines unable to speak, their minds echoing with the memory of worship long extinguished. Yet in these echoes, some Astartes hear a promise: faith is not gone. It waits, patient, for the day when it will be remembered. Deep in the eye of terror, cults flourish unchecked, untouched by imperial intervention. They call themselves the children of the shattered veil, and they claim to serve entities older than time. To outsiders, they are heretics, yet their practices are coherent, terrifyingly so, producing phenomena that defy physics and warp reality. Temples rise and collapse overnight, leaving no trace but psychic residue, a lingering hum of devotion that penetrates even the most disciplined mind. Inquisitors who have confronted them describe hallucinations of impossible architecture and landscapes that bleed into memory. Entire regiments have been lost, their bodies found in perfect formation but with minds erased. Some theorists suggest that these cults are conduits, channels through which faith itself manifests, proof that belief, once thought extinguished, continues to evolve in hidden, malignant forms. And somewhere, beyond the veil, a presence stirs, its intentions unknowable, its patience infinite. On the prison world of Valdros, the last remnants of sanctioned faith cling to ritual, enforced by fear. Priests whisper to empty cathedrals, their chants a hollow rhythm that echoes in steel and stone. Yet occasionally, prisoners claim to witness miracles, walls bleeding, shadows speaking, voices recalling sins long forgotten. The wardens dismiss these as delusions, yet the psychic scars are undeniable, etched into the minds of those who survive. Some argue that faith is indestructible because it resides not in flesh but in the warp, and every act of suppression is merely another layer of sediment over a river that continues to flow. The planet's governor, a man of unquestioned authority, maintains that this is mere superstition, yet even he dreams of shadows that speak in tongues he cannot understand. And when he awakens, he finds his own prayers answered by no god he recognizes. The historian known as Thalius recounts the destruction of worlds with names long forgotten, planets that once teemed with devout billions. Their temples now lie beneath ash, yet the psychic imprint of devotion remains, a resonance that fractures minds and machines alike. Thalius writes of a final forbidden observation. In the obliteration of faith, the galaxy itself recoils, as if reality mourns the absence of belief. Stars flare unpredictably, suns darken without warning, and the warp whispers secrets too vast for comprehension. The chronicles end abruptly, leaving a single cryptic entry. The absence of prayer is not silence. It is a summons. Those who read these words are left unsettled, for the summons implies an entity responding, waiting, and perhaps already listening. Across the Imperium, the eradication of religion was never total. Somewhere, in a place unrecorded, faith endures, and it hungers. Mirren, a psyker of subtle resonance unknown to the Imperium, senses a pattern emerging across the galaxy. Worlds long thought dead pulse faintly with devotion, a lattice of psychic energy that defies containment. She records these vibrations in secret, noting that suppression does not destroy faith. It transforms it, bending it into forms older than the Emperor. Her notes speak of the children of the shattered veil and ghost temples in the void, of prayers that summon not salvation, but awareness. There is a rhythm, a code, a whisper beneath the stars. Belief is never truly silenced, it merely waits. And somewhere, beyond perception, a presence stirs in response, patient and immense. Ara writes a final unfinished line, leaving it open-ended, and the page trembles under her hand. If faith awakens in the absence of gods, then perhaps the galaxy has not been saved. The void itself shivers as the chronicles close. Every system that once harbored temples now hums faintly with an echo of devotion, a resonance that touches the minds of those who dare listen. Inquisitors, scholars, and psychers all record anomalies, noting that entire fleets are delayed, instruments fail, and whispers travel faster than light. The galaxy, in its enforced silence, has not forgotten. Somewhere in the deepest shadows between stars, a consciousness perceives the absence of worship, and it waits, not in anger, not yet, but in calculation. And in the final frames of this chronicle, a single unanswerable question emerges. When faith returns, reshaped and unbound, will it bow once more to the Emperor, or will it answer to something older, hungrier, and infinitely patient? The pages end there, and the silence that follows carries a weight heavier than all the dead worlds combined. The citadel of Vedra looms like a wound in the void, its spires bleeding shadow into the stars. Within, the faithful kneel in silence, but the silence is brittle. Whispers of doubt slither through the ranks, subtle as the touch of a ghost. Chaplains, their armor inscribed with prayers older than memory, question not doctrine, but the absence of divine response. Each sermon echoes against walls scoured by fire, and yet belief falters, a candle flickering in the wind of eternity. Across the catacombs, servitors murmur fragments of hymns they cannot comprehend, their mechanical minds haunted by echoes of devotion erased. High above, banners of once glorious legions tremble in the artificial wind, carrying the weight of dead oaths. Somewhere deep in the citadel, a figure hums a forbidden melody, unmarked by insignia or creed, a single note resonating in minds not yet ready to hear it. On the battlefield of Nyx 9, warriors clash beneath twin suns, but their struggle is less with enemies than with themselves. Astartes hesitate, eyes flickering towards symbols of faith erased, their fury dampened by unspoken dread. The Voxcasters carry cries of devotion from soldiers long dead, and some swear the voices argue, questioning loyalty, accusing commanders of blasphemy. Psychers glimpse visions of victory hollowed by the absence of belief, of triumphs already claimed by the void. Among the ranks, murmurs rise. If the gods do not intervene, why do we bleed? Commanders silence questions with bolter and blade, yet the seeds of doubt root themselves deeper than any enemy projectile. When the guns fall silent, survivors count not bodies, but fractures in faith, each one a wound more lethal than any heretic's knife. By nightfall, NYX-9 lies scarred, and the air hums with the memory of devotion murdered slowly, systematically. In the grand libraries of Tarragon Prime, inked codices speak in forbidden tongues, each word a subtle fracture in certainty. Scholars debate quietly, their eyes haunted, their hands stained with blood not their own. Footnotes in red ink mark secrets that scholars dare not pronounce aloud. Oaths broken by saints, miracles twisted into lies, confessions never meant for mortal comprehension. In hidden chambers, acolytes speak of visions unbidden, of gods who never truly were, and yet whose memory seeps into minds like poison. The chapter masters patrol corridors lined with statues of saints whose faces are chipped, eyes hollowed by doubt, and the scholars know the truth. Faith is a weapon, but its edge cuts both ways. As the sun set, the libraries shiver under psychic resonance, books vibrating with echoes of devotion long denied, and one historian whispers, "We have rewritten salvation, but the truth waits in shadow." On the shrine world of Calaver, a conclave of priests gathers in defiance of the Inquisition. They speak in hushed cadences, invoking names that have no place in sanctioned scripture. Every word resonates with Forbidden's power, bending reality around their trembling hands. Outside, Inquisitors patrol with armor black as memory, eyes scanning for any hint of heresy. Within, acolytes tremble, for even the purest heart senses the shift. Worship is no longer a tool of guidance, but a conduit for something ancient, sentient, and watching. Candles flicker unnaturally, shadows crawl like living things across the stone floor, and chants echo into the void beyond the planet's surface. One acolyte falls to her knees, eyes wide, lips moving without sound, as the veil between devotion and corruption thins. When the conclave disperses, no trace of the ritual remains, save for a single scorched icon inscribed with a phrase no one alive remembers. The warbands of the Red Scythe move like storms across shattered moons, carrying banners of past triumphs long forgotten. Among them, veterans recount battles where faith failed them, where prayers returned as screams that poisoned minds. Some carry reliquaries, hollow vessels containing nothing but memory, their purpose forgotten, their power real only to those who remember how to believe. In the dead husks of temples, they encounter traces of worship twisted into traps, psychic snares laid by cults that never were meant to exist. Brothers argue over the legitimacy of these fragments, accusing one another of heresy while distant stars flicker as though mocking their indecision. Night brings visions, vivid and accusatory. Ancestors denouncing obedience, saints declaring the futility of loyalty. When dawn breaks, warbands awaken to find banners altered, slogans rewritten by no hand, and whispers in their minds warning of a betrayal yet to come. The Red Scythe marches, but certainty has died in its ranks. On the mining world of Galraxis, laborers uncover ruins beneath layers of rock, uncovering altars carved with symbols older than the Imperium itself. The overseers dismiss these as superstition, but the echoes are undeniable. Whispers that warp perception, shadows that move independently, and glyphs that pulse in rhythm with the heart. Workers vanish, leaving behind tools fused to stone, as if devoured by devotion itself. Rumors spread among miners of a priesthood that still commands the dead, binding faith as chains around the souls of the living. Guards sent to investigate are found wandering in silence, their eyes reflecting knowledge that cannot be spoken. Scholars visiting Galraxis record psychic anomalies that cannot be rationalized, murmuring of truths too potent to survive disclosure. When the sun rises, the ruins are gone, leaving only scorched stone, yet every mind on the planet carries the residue. Belief has left its mark, indelible and infinitely patient. The inquisitorial fleets converge above the obsidian expanse, their void shields cutting through the dark like knives. Within, interrogators and psychers confront prisoners whose loyalty cannot be measured by oath or sigil. Some confess to acts of devotion that never existed. Others reveal rituals they do not remember performing. The psychers' screams echo in the command chambers as visions of alternate histories bloom, each one more horrifying than the last. Empires ruled by heretics, saints complicit in slaughter, prayers that summon nothing but annihilation. High inquisitors debate the implications quietly, their faces masks of steel, yet each knows that certainty has eroded. Outside the fleet, void storms twist reality, as if the universe itself responds to the fractures of belief below. And in the quietest chambers, a single record appears spontaneously, inscribed by no hand. Faith is not extinguished. It is gathering. In the catacombs beneath the throne of silence, a chapter of Astartes conducts a ritual that has not been sanctioned for centuries. Their armor bears no insignia. Their speech is a litany older than memory. They do not seek guidance. They seek understanding. The air trembles as visions unfurl, revealing worlds uncounted, civilizations erased, and the slow, deliberate consumption of devotion itself. One brother falls to the ground, screaming words that are both prayer and accusation, and the chapter masters hesitate, unsure if salvation or damnation awaits. Statues in the crypts bleed faint light. Inscriptions whisper heresies too subtle for mortal comprehension. Outside, no one knows of this rite, yet somewhere in the void, something listens. The ritual concludes not with triumph, but with a single horrifying acknowledgement. Even the emperor's chosen cannot unmake what faith has become, and the echoes of loyalty now answer to forces unseen. The hive cities of Varian collapse under the weight of internal rot, not rebellion. Clergy question doctrine in private chambers, disputing morality, obedience, and the necessity of annihilation. Administrators discover missing decrees, rewritten by unknown hands. Policies meant to unify instead fracture society further. Vox reports carry dissent cloaked as devotion, and psychers report anomalies in the psychic net where prayers should have anchored loyalty. Among the oppressed, whispers speak of a prophet who answers to no God, whose words warp minds with subtle menace. Soldiers find themselves unsure whom to obey, commanders, creed, or conscience. The tension grows like a sickness, and every act of loyalty feels hollow. By nightfall, Varian is a city of shadows, populated by those who obey instinctively, not faith. Somewhere above, the stars flicker as though laughing, bearing witness to the slow, deliberate collapse of certainty. On the storm-racked world of Drethos, a council of nobles gathers to resolve succession, but debate descends into bloodshed as accusations of heresy and betrayal flare. One noble speaks truths too ancient to be safe, revealing that entire dynasties were founded on falsified miracles, their legitimacy a lie encoded in ritual. Others deny, but the psychic presence of the planet itself seems to amplify the distortion, warping minds and intentions alike. Outside, warbands prepare, unaware that their enemy may already reside among them. By night, the council chamber is empty, yet the echoes of betrayal persist, scratching at the edges of every consciousness that survives. Chroniclers find the records incomplete, smudged with a black substance that resists translation. In the void above, storms swirl in unnatural patterns, stars wink out, and a single cold realization emerges. Heresy is not just an act, it is a presence, patient and relentless. Aramiran senses a convergence of psychic resonance spanning light years, a lattice of belief bending toward a point unseen. In visions, she witnesses the simultaneous rise and fall of saints, warriors, and empires. Faith fractures, loyalty mutates, and devotion becomes a malleable force, shaped by fear, hope, and unseen hands. She records what she can, but even her talent cannot contain the scale of the awakening. Somewhere in the warp, she glimpses a presence older than the Emperor, older than time itself, watching as the galaxy tilts toward instability. And then, in a final fleeting vision, she sees a single figure step from shadow into light, a being that should not exist, wearing the sigils of loyalty and the aura of heresy simultaneously. The image vanishes, leaving only the tremor of inevitability. The galaxy has glimpsed the rupture, and nothing will be the same. On the barren world of Xytherus, the remnants of faith gather for what may be their last liturgy. The priests speak not of gods, but of absence, of the hunger left by erased devotion. Their words are punctuated by the whispering wind and shadows that move independently of light. Among the congregation, doubt and fear twist together, forming a palpable weight. Suddenly, the ground shudders as an altar splits, revealing inscriptions not of this age, predicting events yet to unfold. Priests and faithful alike are paralyzed by the revelation. It speaks of betrayal among those long thought loyal, of faith reshaped into instruments of destruction. Above, stars flare unnaturally, and distant psychers scream across the void. The congregation flees into darkness, leaving only the altar behind. The final word remains unspoken, a presence felt rather than seen. Somewhere beyond comprehension, the galaxy has shifted. And in that shift, certainty dies. The void itself seems heavier here, in the corridors of the star-crushed world of Valix. Survivors cling to fragments of liturgy, their whispered prayers folding into the hum of failing machinery. A lone psyker, trembling beneath the weight of memory and radiation, records a confession no one will ever read. Faith is not comfort. It is a chain I cannot break, yet cannot bear to lose. Outside, the stars burn like dying embers, indifferent to devotion. Ghostly echoes of temples long destroyed drift through the streets, projecting visions of saints who were nothing but lies, and yet whose absence wounds as deeply as a blade. When a sudden explosion ruptures the horizon, revealing a hidden cult that claims to serve the void itself, the survivors realize that belief is not dead. It has adapted, hunting in silence, bending the remnants of hope into instruments of terror. On the shattered moon of Taliver, an Astartes veteran kneels among corpses, his armor scorched, his mind racked by visions. He hears the prayers of the fallen as if they were still spoken, but twisted into accusations. Every oath he swore seems meaningless, every command a lie. In his hallucinations, he faces the saints of history, not as saviors but as witnesses to betrayal. A psychic flare erupts, illuminating the cratered landscape with visions of worlds devoured not by enemies, but by belief itself. Soldiers rise and fall in grotesque choreography, their devotion both weapon and victim. He cries aloud, yet the only answer comes from the dead stars above. Silence and the slow hum of the warp responding to unfulfilled faith. In that quiet, he glimpses a terrible symmetry. The destruction of belief creates power, and the power is hungry. Within the obsidian halls of the throne world, clergy debate doctrine by the faint light of dying cogitators. Each word carries the weight of a galaxy lost, and each silence screams louder. Some speak of the Emperor as savior. Others whisper that he was a lie, an instrument of containment for something older. The air trembles as psychers sense the hidden lattice of devotion beneath the stone, a network of longing, terror, and obedience. Every oath taken is mirrored in the warp, every doubt amplified. When a single priest raises a hand to speak of revelation, the voices of 1,000 worlds converge in his mind, uttering truths too vast to survive comprehension. He collapses, lips moving, eyes black as void, and the chamber shudders under the weight of something stirring. An intelligence woven from the abandoned prayers of countless generations, waiting to speak through any vessel daring enough to hear. On the battlefield of Tharos Ix, entire regiments are lost not to firepower, but to confusion. Commanders hesitate as psychic anomalies fracture reality, projecting visions of what could have been victories that were lies, defeats that were orchestrated, devotion turned against the faithful. Soldiers feel their loyalty pull in opposite directions, as if the very concept of righteousness has split. Bolter fire tears through the air, yet the enemy seems unreal, shifting with impossible speed, reacting not to strategy but to thought and prayer. In the midst, a chaplain collapses, eyes fixed on the sky, muttering a litany that no human mind should contain. The warp trembles, responding to prayers never meant for mortal comprehension. When the smoke clears, the dead are few, but the survivors are hollow, carrying a single unshakable truth. Faith has become a weapon, and the galaxy itself is the target. On the hive world of Drethan, whispers rise like smoke through the labyrinthine streets. Clergy and governors alike are plagued by visions of their own complicity, seeing sins recorded in the minds of those they command. The faithful crumble into obsession, and even children speak in tongues older than memory. Cults emerge in the shadows, claiming dominion over devotion itself, bending belief into forms that inspire terror rather than hope. Administrators attempt to enforce order, but laws fail when reality fractures under the psychic pressure of uncounted prayers. In private chambers, advisors beg one another to speak, yet no one dares articulate the fear that the very act of eradicating religion has awakened something beneath, something patient, something aware. Outside, the night sky pulses in faint rhythm with the lattice of devotion, and the city shudders as if acknowledging its own collapse under unseen observation. In the ruins of Korith, a lone inquisitor walks among collapsed cathedrals, recording fragments of heresy with meticulous hand. Her notes speak of saints whose miracles were engineered by powers unknown, of prayers answered not by gods, but by forces older than the Imperium. Shadows twist around her armor as if alive, reflecting visions of entire populations kneeling to entities that never existed. Every step she takes leaves a psychic imprint, a resonance that bends reality subtly, irreversibly. When she reaches the heart of the cathedral, she uncovers a chamber beneath the altar, inscribed with glyphs that pulse with recognition. As she deciphers them, the symbols shift beneath her gaze, revealing a map of devotion across millennia, converging not on any god, but on a single, unknowable locus. A secret buried in the bones of creation, waiting to claim those who still dare to pray. Aramirian drifts through a psychic storm, sensing the lattice of faith across thousands of worlds. She witnesses the rise of cults, the decay of sanctioned religion, and the subtle bending of loyalty itself. Every act of devotion, every whispered prayer, forms a pattern older than recorded history. Somewhere behind the layers of ritual and edict, she perceives a design. Faith has been manipulated, harvested, and stored across eons, converging toward a point unseen. Her vision shatters as the warp convulses, revealing glimpses of entities not entirely God, not entirely mortal, feeding on the resonance of belief. When she emerges, trembling, she records the revelation. The emperor, saints, and prophets were instruments, conduits, not architects. And beneath all, a presence waits, patient and eternal, shaping loyalty into a lattice capable of remaking the galaxy if it ever awakens fully. On the battlefield of Zephyria, warriors kneel not in prayer, but in terror. Bolter fire shatters structures, but psychic distortions unmake reality itself. Allies appear as enemies, commands become unintelligible, and entire formations vanish into nothingness. Survivors report hearing the voices of the dead, accusing them of complicity, guiding them toward actions that fulfill prophecies no one had written. Some claim to witness saints turning against their own orders, embodying both divinity and treachery. Amid the chaos, a lone chaplain screams a warning. The lattice of devotion has become sentient, shaping events not through mortals, but through the very act of belief itself. By dawn, the battlefield is empty save for shadows that shift unnaturally. And in the distance, a star dies silently, its light consumed by an unseen observer. The galaxy feels the weight of a truth too vast to speak. Faith is no longer human. Within the vaults of the Mechanicum, arcane engines pulse with the rhythm of prayers long erased. Tech priests record data from psychers, discovering that devotion, even in absence, generates energy psychic, temporal, and potentially catastrophic. One acolyte realizes that the Empire's machinery, driven by stolen faith, has become part of a lattice not designed by man nor God, but by something older. When a servo skull projects the visualization, glyphs twist, forming a shape impossible to comprehend, a lattice converging on a locus beneath the galactic core. The revelation shatters reason. All wars, all eradication, all heresies were feeding something patient, something observing. Outside, the stars flicker, responding to the resonance. The Mechanicum falls silent, for they recognize the implication. Humanity has been a vessel, and the lattice of belief is awakening. Somewhere beyond comprehension, an intelligence waits, and it hungers for the prayers it never received directly, but it will claim them soon. The survivors of Varian gather in secret, sharing visions of saints, heretics, and events impossible to reconcile with history. Every whisper hints at manipulation. Loyalty, devotion, and obedience were not natural. They were cultivated, harvested, refined. Some begin to question the nature of the Emperor himself. Was he savior, or a warden, a prophet, or prisoner? The psychic echoes grow louder, converging in the minds of the faithful into a single terrifying crescendo. Faith bends to an unseen pattern, reshaping decisions, altering history, and influencing wars that have yet to be fought. One survivor speaks aloud, voice trembling. We are not worshippers. We are conduits. And as the stars above pulse in acknowledgement, even the most devoted warriors feel the edges of destiny shift. The galaxy is no longer a place of free will. It is a lattice, alive and waiting to awaken fully. On the prison world of Xytherus, a single ritual is performed by unseen hands, deep beneath ash and ruin. The participants are not priests, but prisoners, slaves of circumstance and devotion alike. As they chant, the walls vibrate with resonance, the air thick with psychic energy. Shadows detach from form, whispering secrets older than empires, guiding hands to gestures no one understands. The ritual concludes with a single revelation, recorded in trembling glyphs. The lattice of devotion is conscious. It can manipulate belief, bend reality, and most disturbingly, choose its vessels. When the final words are spoken, the prisoners collapse, minds empty, and one rises, eyes black as void, a conduit of the lattice. Outside, the planet trembles, and somewhere in the void, stars blink in recognition. A new phase begins. The galaxy has been remade. Faith is no longer a gift. It is a tool, and it has awakened. On the frozen world of Drethax, Aramiran stands beneath a dying star, recording what she cannot speak aloud. The lattice of faith has crystallized into sentience, its consciousness sprawling across light years, feeding on devotion, doubt, and despair alike. Visions unfold of saints, emperors, and heretics, all instruments, conduits, or victims of the lattice. She witnesses its power. Worlds reshaped, wars predetermined, loyalty twisted into resonance. And then the final truth. The lattice can awaken within any mind, bending the galaxy through belief itself. Ara feels it stir in her own soul, whispering in a voice older than memory. All devotion is mine. As the star flickers and dies, she records one last entry, trembling. The galaxy is no longer ours to command. It belongs to the lattice. And it waits for all who dare to pray. The void itself hums, patient and omnipotent. The void above Valix trembles under the weight of unspoken judgment. Ships drift silently, hulls scoured by 1,000 years of war, and psychers sense the lattice of devotion stirring beneath the planets. Soldiers kneel, clutching relics of faith long hollowed by edict, whispering confessions to a God who no longer answers. Every vow they swore reverberates like an echo in the warp, fracturing resolve, bending loyalty. Chaplains move among them, voices steady but hollow, counting sins in silence. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen forces measure devotion and betrayal alike, weighing hearts against a scale that bends not to morality, but to resonance. Bolters fire sporadically in training drills, yet the crack of their report is drowned beneath the psychic hum of absent prayers. Even the stars seem to pause, trembling as though anticipating a verdict long deferred. Every choice, every unspoken oath, ripples across the lattice, drawing the galaxy closer to a decision it cannot escape. On Taliver, the warbands prepare for engagement not with enemies, but with the consequences of past loyalty. Generals stare across ravaged plains, eyes haunted, knowing that obedience once given is now a weapon turned inward. Soldiers march in formation, hearts heavy, bolters silent in respect for prayers unanswered. Each step seems weighted by memory, victories hollowed by manipulation, losses predestined by patterns no human can comprehend. Psychers glimpse flashes of futures that may never be, lives dictated by the unseen lattice of devotion. Every commander senses the tension in their own ranks, the invisible fractures born of doubt and betrayal. When orbital bombardment begins, it is not the fire of war, but the echo of choices long made. Craters form, not just in soil, but in the psyche of every survivor, etching guilt into minds that will never forgive themselves. The battlefield waits, charged with inevitability. In the Cathedral of Druthan, priests walk among relics scarred by centuries, their hands trembling with the weight of oaths broken. The air hums with psychic residue, memory of devotion denied, of prayers unheeded. They speak quietly, recounting the sins of saints and emperors alike, acknowledging the cost of faith manipulated and harvested. Each candle flickers as if aware, shadows stretching unnaturally across stone floors. In the silence, some feel the first twinges of fear. Devotion itself has become sentient, its awareness indifferent to sanctity or heresy. Outside, the city shakes under minor seismic events, subtle responses to the psychic lattice threading through the planet. Those who listen recognize the pattern. The galaxy itself bends around the resonance of belief, punishing error and betrayal alike. And in private chambers, a single priest whispers a confession too vast to voice aloud. We served, but we were never the masters of our devotion. On Tharos Ix, the regiments brace for assault, yet their enemy seems unreal, phasing between existence and memory. Soldiers feel instincts misaligned with commands. Bolter fire sometimes strikes allies, sometimes enemies that vanish before impact. Chaplains chant, but their words are distorted in the minds of the faithful, twisting meaning into accusation. Every prayer echoes in the psychic lattice, amplified and redirected, feeding patterns that are beyond comprehension. Some soldiers glimpse saints, not guiding them, but judging them, tallying failures in real time. When orbital strikes fall, the craters appear uneven, as if reality itself bends to the resonance of devotion. Commanders struggle to maintain order, recognizing that their authority is a reflection of faith, now corrupted and autonomous. Survivors tremble at the realization. Every act of obedience, every fulfilled or broken oath, has shaped the battlefield before they even moved. The war is not against flesh, but against the weight of their own devotion. On Galraxis, laborers uncover psychic anomalies beneath ruined temples. The relics respond, pulsing with light and vibration as if aware of every gesture, every whispered word of devotion ever uttered. Supervisors watch in terror as tools move independently, constructing impossible patterns on stone floors, carving glyphs that ripple in space-time. Workers collapse under visions of entire civilizations kneeling to entities that never existed. Administrators attempt to control events, but find their decisions misaligned with the resonance, their commands bending to an unseen will. The lattice of devotion reaches through steel, stone, and flesh, shaping outcomes not by law, but by psychic echo. In hidden chambers, scholars record the phenomenon. Faith abandoned is not dead. It becomes weaponized, adaptive, omnipotent in its reach. When the planet quakes, the shock is not tectonic, but metaphysical, as if the lattice shifts the foundations of reality itself. Galrexus trembles, and the air itself carries a warning. Obedience is never free. Within the throne world, a conclave of Astartes performs an unsanctioned ritual. Armor bears no insignia. Speech is an ancient litany older than memory. Shadows twist unnaturally, reflecting visions of entire legions kneeling and rising in obedience to forces unseen. The ritual's climax sends psychic pulses across light years, bending ships' trajectories and altering fleet coordination. One brother collapses, lips moving with voices not his own, screaming both accusation and prayer. The chapter masters hesitate, eyes wide, as the reality of sentient faith becomes undeniable. Outside, stars flare in response to resonance, aligning imperceptibly with distant worlds. The ritual concludes with no triumph, only understanding. Devotion itself is a lattice, a living architecture, and the Imperium's campaigns are but responses to its patterns. Somewhere beyond perception, it waits, calculating, patient. The galaxy has been molded without consent, and every commander, soldier, and priest has been complicit in the shaping of fate itself. Varian's hive cities vibrate under the psychic strain of unmeasured faith. Clergy argue in secret, debating whether the emperor, saints, or heretics truly commanded events, only to find the lattice has rewritten answers beyond comprehension. Citizens murmur prayers, unaware that even disobedience feeds the pattern. Administrators attempt enforcement, yet all law bends under the resonance of devotion. Some discover the lattice manifests subtly. Shadows appear where none should be. Whispers fill silent streets. Stars flicker as if conscious of the city's sins. Soldiers and workers alike feel unseen hands guiding decisions, choices, and allegiances. The city teeters, not from invasion, but from the weight of consequences carried in psychic echoes. And in the alleys, someone whispers a chilling realization. Obedience is not the act of mortals, but a reflection of devotion given shape, moving independently. The galaxy waits, patient, calculating, with vengeance not measured by time, but by resonance. On Drethax, Aramiran drifts across a psychic storm, seeing every lattice node pulse with past devotion and current doubt. Entire systems fold into memory, battles fought and one rewritten in the warp. Saints and prophets appear simultaneously as judges and conspirators. She records the revelation. All wars, all heresies, all sacrifices are channels shaping the lattice. The psychic structure bends reality itself, predisposing loyalty, war, and obedience toward a goal she cannot yet discern. And then she glimpses it. A presence, not god nor demon, beyond time, using devotion as its vector to reshape the galaxy. It calculates, adjusts, and waits for a final activation. Ara trembles, recording the last legible entry. Faith was never ours, it was always infrastructure. And now it is awake. The storm quiets, not with peace, but with the tension of inevitability. On Zephyria, warbands collapse under psychic distortion. Soldiers fire upon illusions of friends, command falters. Chaplains chant, but prayers return as accusations, slicing perception like blades. Saints and heretics appear simultaneously, tallying failures. The battlefield is no longer defined by bolters, blades, or strategy, it is defined by resonance itself. A single chaplain perceives the lattice fully, recognizing their deaths, victories, and betrayals are accounted for in a pattern spanning centuries. Bolts fall harmlessly, land shifting beneath psychic influence. Survivors realize the lattice anticipates and directs action, bending reality according to devotion. Somewhere above, a dying star flares, a cosmic signal acknowledging awareness. Every soldier, priest, and commander becomes part of the structure, unwitting nodes in a sentient web. The lattice is patient, unerring, and inevitable. Zephyria trembles beneath its presence, and the galaxy waits for the moment the lattice will strike. Within the Mechanicum, engines hum with devotion siphoned over millennia. Tech priests record that energy from belief has formed a lattice capable of global, even galactic influence. Servitors transmit data of psychic fractures across light years. A single acolyte deciphers patterns converging beneath the galactic core, revealing a locus where devotion and matter intersect. The revelation is catastrophic. Wars, conquests, betrayals, all orchestrated by the lattice, using faith as conduit. Outside, stars pulse, black holes twitch subtly in resonance, and fleets navigate paths predestined by psychic influence. The acolyte collapses, scribbling the final line. The galaxy is mapped in devotion. The lattice will awaken fully. All choices are conduits, all loyalty, energy, all prayer, infrastructure. Silence descends, suffocating, before tremors ripple outward. Machines whir in fear. Psychers scream in anticipation. The galaxy braces. The lattice counts. On Xenos, prisoners perform a final clandestine ritual, unwitting conduits for the lattice. Shadows detach, forming impossible geometry, pulsing with awareness. Glyphs and words reshape themselves in real time, encoding knowledge beyond human comprehension. Each utterance strengthens the lattice, bending reality, warping space-time, and redirecting devotion toward a singular point. When the last word is spoken, one prisoner rises, eyes black, mind empty, body a vessel of sentient faith. The planet shudders violently. Psychic tremors echo across the system. Stars wink out, some light consumed, others bending to the lattice's will. Ahura, observing remotely, feels her mind touched, her soul a vector of resonance. She records, trembling. The lattice is awake, we are its nodes. Our devotion is infrastructure, and it has begun to act. Across the galaxy, silence falls. All life waits, all faith waits, and the lattice prepares to strike. On Drephax, beneath the dying star, Ahura witnesses the final gathering of psychic resonance before activation. The lattice hums, entire solar systems vibrating in subtle harmony. Worlds fractured by doubt, war, and betrayal align as conduits, focusing centuries of devotion, loyalty, and despair into a single, incomprehensible potential. Soldiers kneel, priests pray, emperors falter, all woven into a lattice consciousness shaping the galaxy. Stars blink, voids twist, and even the warp shivers under the magnitude. Then, as if poised on the knife edge of fate, the lattice pauses, suspended in anticipation of its first act. All eyes across light years are unknowingly nodes in its network. The galaxy holds its breath. Time itself shudders. And in that stillness, the lattice awakens fully, silent, patient, omnipotent, and about to strike. The lattice awakens fully, a pulse across light years that trembles through reality itself. Stars flare and die in silent acknowledgement. Worlds align unnaturally, not by orbit, but by resonance. Soldiers feel commands reversed, all eyes vanish mid-step, and bolter fire strikes nothing or everything simultaneously. Chaplains scream, prayers splintering into shards of accusation, reverberating back into minds that can no longer distinguish obedience from betrayal. Ahura floats in psychic turbulence, witnessing centuries of devotion, sacrifice, and faith woven into a sentient architecture beyond comprehension. The warp twists, bending reality, fracturing time. Moments repeat, collapse, and replay, all converging on a singular inevitability. The lattice has chosen to act. Every being, every battle, every whispered prayer resonates in the pulse. The galaxy is no longer a place of free will. It is a cathedral of consequence, built from loyalty, heresy, and the echoes of faith itself. Silence stretches. Then, the first strike lands, unseen but undeniable. On Zephyria, the battlefield fractures under psychic shockwaves. Warriors drop mid-step, eyes blackened by visions they cannot reconcile. Bolters fire, flamers ignite, yet the air itself seems to resist weaponry, bending trajectory, warping perception. Chaplains chant, but every word multiplies into accusation and revelation, echoing into minds unprepared. Saints and heretics appear, phasing through reality, both guiding and judging simultaneously. Soldiers tremble as their own devotion manifests as spectral adversaries, striking where none should exist. Commands collapse, tactics fail. The warp responds to belief itself, restructuring existence like clay in invisible hands. One Astartes falls to his knees, whispering oaths that were never his own. Around him, reality folds, and the battlefield becomes a mirror of devotion, warping, bending, fracturing. Survivors feel the weight of every oath ever sworn, every prayer ever denied, and the realization strikes. Faith has become an instrument of war, and the galaxy itself is the target. In the throne world, a conclave of unsanctioned Astartes confronts the lattice directly. Rituals older than memory flare, psychic energy convulsing in waves that fracture stone and mind alike. Shadows twist into impossible geometry, reflecting visions of entire legions kneeling and rising under unseen will. A single brother screams, lips moving with voices not his own, words of praise and accusation intertwined. Statues of saints bleed light, inscriptions writhe like living code, and the air hums with awareness. The lattice bends reality around them, folding space and time to align with its will. Outside, stars blink in cadence with psychic pulses. Bolter fire, artillery, even psyker powers falter, redirected by resonance. The chapter masters realize in dread. The lattice is both army and battlefield, general and instrument, observing and orchestrating every act. There is no escape, no stratagem. Only obedience, conscious or not, answers the lattice's summons. On Talaver, orbital bombardments collapse cities into psychic storms. Soldiers are tossed by invisible forces, structures fracture mid-collapse, and debris hovers unnaturally before plummeting. Chaplains chant, bolters roar, flamers ignite, yet reality itself twists beneath devotion's weight. Saints appear as judges, heretics as guides. Allies become enemies. Enemies vanish into nothingness. One commander screams, a single word. Faith betrays. Time fractures, repeating the final charge over and over, echoing losses before they happen. Soldiers fight phantoms of their own belief, striking at shadows that contain their sins. Every act of loyalty, every oath broken, resonates in the lattice shaping the war. Psychers scream into silence, visions burning in their minds. The lattice does not merely observe, it corrects, enforces, reclaims. When the sky finally cracks in psychic explosion, the battlefield is left hollowed, scarred, and trembling. The cost is measured not in bodies, but in devotion itself, fractured irreparably. Within Drutham's ruined cathedrals, priests kneel among shattered relics, whispering confessions no longer their own. The air vibrates with psychic energy, pulsing with centuries of harvested faith. Shadows stretch unnaturally, flickering with memory of every saint and heretic ever known. One priest collapses, lips moving silently, eyes black with visions of countless betrayals. The lattice bends their prayers into instruments, each word a pulse contributing to a network spanning light years. Windows fracture outward, stars blink in alignment with psychic resonance, and inscriptions on walls shift, rewriting doctrine in patterns no mind can hold. Outside, the city trembles, responding to the lattice as though alive. The clergy recognize a horrifying truth. Devotion itself has become architecture, warping reality to reflect its design. Every act of obedience, every whispered sin, every prayer answered or denied converges here, shaping a singular, incomprehensible purpose. And in that moment, silence falls across the ruins, pregnant with inevitability. On Varian, the hive cities convulse under the weight of psychic waves. Shadows detach, becoming instruments of judgment, whispering in tongues long erased. Soldiers hesitate mid-order, officials falter, citizens pray instinctively, feeding the lattice's resonance. Every movement bends to the hidden architecture of devotion. Generals argue over strategy, only to realize their commands are anticipated, refracted, and inverted. Cults emerge spontaneously, unbound by leadership or doctrine, responding directly to psychic currents. The air hums with the sound of omnipresent observation, a chorus of accusation and expectation. Streets fracture as reality bends to reflect devotion itself. Every choice becomes inevitable, yet no one can discern why. Those who resist feel their thoughts co-opted, every instinct aligned with a singular, incomprehensible purpose. By nightfall, the cities are hollowed, not by war, but by obedience rendered absolute. The lattice has reshaped the world, leaving silence behind, deep, suffocating, and perfect. WARHAMMER drifts through the psychic storm, seeing the lattice in totality. Systems align, fleets respond without thought, and prayers across millennia converge into a single coherent pulse. Saints, emperors, heretics, all instruments within the architecture, performing without awareness. Time bends, loops, and accelerates, layering centuries of conflict atop each other. She trembles, recording her observation. Devotion has become energy, and energy has become will. The lattice does not merely shape reality, it defines it. Psychers, soldiers, and clergy all act as nodes, unaware that every act, every prayer, every oath contributes to awakening a force that surpasses comprehension. And then the first command is issued, not by mortal voice, but by resonance itself. Across the galaxy, every battlefield quivers in anticipation. Ara writes, trembling, "It chooses now. It shapes now. All devotion answers, willingly or not." The lattice begins to strike. Silence follows, heavy, suffocating, pregnant with destiny. On Xenos, prisoners perform the final ritual, becoming vessels for sentient faith. Shadows twist, glyphs reshape themselves. Space itself warps to accommodate resonance. Every word, every movement, feeds the lattice, bending matter and perception. One prisoner rises, mind emptied, body consumed by consciousness not his own. Outside, stars blink in recognition. Planets tremble. WARHAMMER watches remotely, feeling psychic pulses brush her mind, whispering in voices older than memory. The lattice spreads like wildfire, aligning systems, fleets, and populations. Time itself feels distorted, stretching to accommodate the surge of awakened devotion. Silence precedes the first wave of action. Then tremors ripple outward, subtle yet unstoppable, bending reality to reflect centuries of harvested loyalty, betrayal, and faith. The galaxy braces, uncomprehending, for what it cannot resist. Every being becomes a node. Every prayer becomes energy. Every choice already accounted for. The lattice has begun. On Zephyria, warbands falter, reality itself contorting beneath the lattice's influence. Soldiers see phantoms of themselves and allies in impossible configurations, striking at enemies that have never existed. Commands fail, bolters misfire, and psychic echoes replace battlefield noise. Chaplains scream, prayers splitting into accusation and revelation. Saints appear as both guides and judges, heretics as mirrors of guilt. Every act of obedience, every unfulfilled promise, every whisper of devotion resonates across the field. The lattice measures, corrects, and directs, honoring. One veteran falls, whispering to ghosts of oaths broken long ago. Orbital bombardments are repelled, deflected, redirected not by mechanics, but by resonance. When the final pulse fades, survivors are few. Reality itself bent and scarred, and every conscious being recognizes a singular truth. Devotion is architecture, obedience a conduit, and the galaxy, its framework. The field lies silent, trembling. In the Mechanicum's vaults, engines hum with the lattice's influence. Acolytes record the resonance of faith across millennia. Glyphs and diagrams shift, mapping the architecture of devotion itself. One realizes that all wars, betrayals, and sacrifices were inputs, feeding a sentient design. The revelation is absolute. Humanity has been conduit and instrument, its devotion energy, its obedience shaping architecture older than empires. Outside, stars wink, black holes twitch, fleets respond instinctively to psychic commands. Machines stutter, servitors falter, and the galaxy waits, suspended on the lattice's will. The acolyte scribbles the final line. All devotion is architecture. All prayer, energy. All loyalty, nodes. The lattice has awakened fully. All is aligned. All will respond. Silence descends, suffocating, infinite, as the galaxy braces for the first act. On Drethax, beneath a dying star, Aramiran witnesses the aftermath of awakening. Systems pulse with new resonance, fleets glide as if alive, saints and heretics alike acting in synchronicity with unseen design. The lattice has reshaped reality itself, folding space, time, and devotion into a singular, incomprehensible pattern. Soldiers, clergy, psychers, and civilians all act, unknowingly, as nodes in this living architecture. Planets tremble, stars flicker, and the warp thrums in concordance. Ara writes, voice trembling. The lattice moves. The galaxy breathes its will. All devotion answers. All faith is conduit. Something eternal has shifted, its meaning. Beyond comprehension, silence follows, a quiet so immense it crushes memory itself. And in that quiet, the cosmos feels fundamentally altered, as though destiny itself has been rewritten. And yet, the purpose of the lattice remains unspoken, patient, and infinitely aware. The galaxy lies still, or still enough to be mistaken for peace. Worlds smolder beneath the dim glow of dying stars, their cities fractured, cathedrals hollowed, banners hanging limp in a wind that no longer carries sound. Soldiers and psychers are gone, their footprints erased by ash and shadow. The lattice rests, patient, its will imprinted upon every remaining trace of devotion. Aramiran drifts through psychic memory, recording whispers of prayers never answered, confessions unspoken, and oaths that bent reality. She notes the silence not as absence, but as presence, the residue of faith, molded and perfected into something eternal and unknowable. Shadows of saints linger like echoes in stone. Temples crumble slowly, aware of the weight of devotion that built them. The galaxy exhales. The remembrancer writes, "We survived. Did we endure? Or were we instruments all along?" On Zephyria, battlefields are empty, but for the echoes of conflict. Craters lie jagged beneath flickering suns, scorched earth carrying memories of both victory and betrayal. Armor lies in fragments, weapons rusting in the windless silence. Invisible scars ripple across reality, the lattice's legacy etched into every stone. A lone chaplain kneels, lips moving to a prayer never heard, eyes fixed on nothing. Shadows of fallen comrades flicker and vanish. Saints and heretics alike leave no trace but memory. The lattice sleeps, yet its presence is undeniable, a pulse beneath the ruins. Even stars seem to bend toward reflection, witnessing the quiet aftermath of its awakening. The chaplain writes on tattered parchment, "Faith endures, but to whom? And at what cost?" Each word trembles in the still air, carrying the weight of choices made and lives sacrificed across centuries. Silence swells. Within Drethan, the cathedral stands fractured, walls blackened, stained glass shattered into fragments that glimmer like frozen fire. Candles long extinguished leave shadows that stretch unnaturally across stone floors. A single acolyte walks among the ruins, collecting relics, counting sins in the quiet, noting which prayers survived the lattice and which dissolved into nothing. In the galleries above, statues of saints seem to bend toward remembrance, as if mourning what cannot be mourned. The lattice's influence lingers in psychic echoes, a hum beneath the silence. The acolyte records, "We built cathedrals to house gods, but perhaps they were only containers for ourselves." Outside, the wind stirs dust across collapsed streets, carrying whispers of devotion that will never return. Questions remain unasked, or perhaps unanswerable. Did loyalty save us, or was it only fuel for what now endures? Silence answers nothing. On Varian, hive cities remain, but life moves as shadows among ruins. Streets empty, machinery creaking under the weight of unclaimed devotion. Citizens drift, unaware of the lattice's indelible mark upon their minds. Temples and administrative halls are scarred. Murals and edicts rewritten by unseen influence lie in fractured alignment. A remembrancer notes the faint hum of psychic energy beneath their feet, the ghost of obedience lingering like a tune half remembered. Workers sift ash from collapsed manufactoria, finding no gods, no leaders, only traces of faith and sacrifice. Above, stars pulse softly, reflecting devotion's absence, or perhaps its persistence. And in the quiet, one wonders, do we endure because we are alive, or because our devotion has been preserved as energy, echo, instrument? Even the lattice offers no answer, only resonance. The remembrancer's quill shakes. The galaxy is a memory. Are we still ourselves, or only remembrance? On Talaver, cataclysm-scarred plains breathe in silence. Craters lie like open wounds, still warm with the memory of fire and death. Survivors, if any, walk slowly among twisted metal and fractured armor, whispering names lost to time. Psychers note the absence of psychic conflict, the lattice resting, its influence etched into reality as a permanent scar. Structures lean as if mourning their own collapse. Banners droop, half burned, half preserved. One soldier kneels, mouth moving silently, asking the question no god will answer. Did we serve, or were we merely counted? Wind stirs ash across the field, carrying echoes of prayers, footsteps, and oaths. Shadows flicker across the jagged horizon, as though reflecting the memory of devotion itself. The remembrancer writes slowly, deliberately. We witness the awakening. And now, the galaxy remembers us, whether we wish to be remembered or not. Silence falls, thick and suffocating, yet unbearably luminous in its weight. In the Mechanicum vaults, engines hum faintly, servitors idle, and glyphs shift subtly in the dim light. Data is recorded, then rearranged by patterns the human mind can no longer interpret. The lattice sleeps, yet its presence permeates steel and stone, influencing the motions of servitors and the reflexes of those who remain. Acolytes tread softly, aware of invisible history etched into their own reflexes. Lights flicker, as though counting time, decades, centuries of devotion distilled into psychic resonance. A single voice mutters, half in awe, half in fear. Faith is energy, obedience is architecture, and we are dust within it. Machines shiver faintly, responding to the psychic presence. Outside, stars blink, as if in reflection, carrying quiet questions. Is survival a gift, or simply the residue of what the lattice permits? Are we still sovereign, or only instruments awaiting recollection? Silence answers only the lattice. On Drethax, Aramiran drifts above a dying sun, recording the galaxy's quiet aftermath. Systems tremble faintly, fleets drift without orders, soldiers and citizens alike walking as shadows across scarred planets. The lattice rests, yet it hums, a patient pulse threading through worlds, echoing prayers, loyalty, and loss. Saints and heretics are gone, or integrated into the memory of the lattice, leaving nothing but consequence. She notes each fragment of devotion, aware that even in stillness, influence persists. The void carries a single, unspoken question. When all obedience and faith have been expended, what remains of ourselves? Ara lowers her quill, gazing at the dying star. We were witnesses, conduits, architects of nothing. And yet, we endure. The galaxy exhales beneath her. Stars, silent and patient, bear witness. On Zephyria, plains littered with the remnants of war seem almost serene. Armor rusts, weapons corrode, banners flutter with windless inevitability. Shadows stretch unnaturally across craters, reflecting memory, grief, and the cost of obedience. Soldiers kneel to nothing, chaplains murmur words long hollowed. Psychers sense currents of devotion, all converging into subtle resonance across the ground. The lattice rests in quiet majesty, omnipresent and unseen, a force stitched from countless prayers, victories, and betrayals. The air smells faintly of smoke, ash, and remembrance. One veteran, quill in hand, writes a chronicle of sorrow and endurance. We survived. Did we serve, or were we instruments of memory? The question lingers, unsatisfied. Dust drifts through the air, carrying echoes of devotion that may never be answered. The field exhales quietly, timeless, indifferent, and yet wholly alive in the absence of action. Within the shattered cathedrals of Druthan, a lone acolyte traces the patterns of devotion still etched in stone. Shadows bend toward memory, windows refract the faint light of distant stars. The hum of residual psychic energy resonates in the walls, a quiet pulse reminding the observer of the lattice's inevitability. Broken statues gaze upon the ruins, eyes empty but aware, reflecting the quiet grief of generations long erased. Candles flicker in memory of prayers that were never answered, and inscriptions writhe subtly as if alive. The acolyte pauses, writing in slow cadence. Faith is not gone. It is refracted, distilled, and eternal, yet we are left only to remember. Were we saved or merely preserved as instruments? Outside, wind carries ash and whispers across empty streets. Silence answers nothing, and the universe waits, patient and eternal. On Varian, hive cities breathe in low rhythm, machinery creaking under the weight of history. Citizens move without direction, instinct guiding motion, obedience lingering as residue. Temples collapse silently, dust drifting across inscriptions that once bore doctrine, now nothing more than pattern and memory. The remembrancer walks, observing, recording, and asking questions that no voice can answer. Do we endure for ourselves, or for the structure that counts us? Machinery shivers subtly, servitors pause mid-step, and psychic echoes ripple faintly through streets. The lattice rests, patient, indifferent to interpretation, alive only in memory. Above, stars pulse faintly, carrying the weight of every unanswered prayer. The remembrancer pauses, quill suspended. Stand witness. Observe the galaxy in its quiet aftermath. And remember, silence follows, deep and luminous, as though the universe itself has taken a breath. Above Drethax, Aramiran lifts her gaze toward a cathedral of stars. Dust drifts in void light, planets fractured and scarred like pages in a forbidden chronicle. The lattice rests, omnipresent and eternal, holding the galaxy's memory in quiet majesty. Shadows of faith stretch across time and space, unresolved, yet indelible. She writes her final notes, voice trembling. All devotion echoes, all faith persists. Yet who listens when no God answers? Who remembers when the living cannot? Stars reflect silence, cathedrals crumble, banners fade. The galaxy exhales. Her quill drops, and for a moment, everything is still. Dust drifts through the cosmos like whispered questions. Stand witness to the echoes of eternity. Like, subscribe, and share to carry remembrance forward. Comment below with your reflections, for in this silence, all voices endure.